What's up, guys? I wanted to share with you the latest spray gun I've added to my arsenal, and that is the GX4 HVLP gel coat and resin spray gun from the Gel Coater. I'm really leveling up my composites game with a focus on pattern fabrication, not only by creating new unique designs, but the patterns are getting bigger, the volume of patterns I'm producing is increasing, and I always want to strive for the best overall service quality while being as efficient as possible. This gun looks really promising for that, so I'll unbox it, share with you some of my initial thoughts, and prepare to put it through its paces by surfacing that rectangular planter pattern that you see behind me. But first, let's go through the three main guns I currently use, what I use them for, the pros and cons of each of those, and that'll give you some context into why I decided to pick up the GX4 and give it a go. All right, first is the G100 gel coat dump gun. If I'm spraying into a mold or pulling a mold from a pattern, this is what I reach for 99% of the time. In that situation, I don't need to produce a quality finish face up, and therefore I don't need the fine degree of control provided by an HVLP. Instead, I'm relying on the mold or pattern to produce that finished surface of the fiberglass gel coat, and what I really need is to quickly and efficiently get material out of the cup and onto the surface. And the G100 is designed specifically for that task. For small to medium-sized projects, it's really hard to beat. It's got a large nozzle with a cone-shaped spray pattern that sprays viscous material quickly and effortlessly. It's got minimal moving parts, and by design, this couldn't be easier to clean up. Now, you can get a variety of nozzle sizes to spray different types of materials, but really this thing is made to spray resin and gel coat. Now, like I mentioned, it's great for spraying against a mold or a pattern surface, but it's not so great at spraying viscous material face up. And that's a common task when surfacing a pattern to prepare it with a high quality finish for pulling a mold. For that, you really need an HVLP that allows you to dial in that fan pattern, material flow, and air pressure to produce a quality surface. All right, enter the next gun in my arsenal, the G860 2.5 HVLP gel coat and resin gun. As the name would suggest, if you've used an HVLP, this gun will be very familiar to you. It works exactly the same way. You'll have a cup for material, fluid, air, and fan adjustments, and when you pull the trigger, that'll pull the needle back, open up the nozzle, and release your material to be atomized by low pressure air to apply to the surface. Difference is that 2.5 millimeter nozzle. Most HVLP guns will have a range anywhere from 1.0 to maybe 2.0, with 1.4 being pretty typical for a general purpose nozzle size. And those sizes are just fine when applying thinner materials like top coats, sealers, those kinds of materials. But it won't work as well when the material gets more viscous. This nozzle is almost twice that, and that is exactly what you need when applying thicker surfacing primers like Duratec, where you want a heavier application and a higher build. Typical HVLP just isn't designed for that. Now, this gun's relatively inexpensive and performs pretty well for small and medium-sized patterns, but as the surface area increases, you will find that you may struggle applying something like Duratec that's also notorious for its really short pot life. You just won't get through it fast enough. Hold that thought. All right, for everything else, I use the 3M AccuSpray. I really love this gun. The disposable nozzles with different sizes is a genius design that allows you to easily handle a wide variety of materials and have that extra insurance that if a material goes off in the gun, especially a catalyzed material, you can simply remove and dispose of the nozzle and then replace it with a new one without affecting the entire gun body. Now, while they're designed to be disposable, I've found you can actually reuse these a number of times over with basic cleaning. Now, for general purpose, I'm using this orange 1.4 nozzle. For sealers and top coats, it's a coin flip between the 1.2 and 1.3. And then for some heavier top coats like Duratec's vinyl ester top coat, I'm using the clear 1.8. And then of course there's these red 2.0 nozzles, and I will tell you, I really wanted these to work with Duratec. But after trying all kinds of things, the reality is they simply don't, or at least not well enough to be remotely useful. Now, when you compare the AccuSpray with the 2.0 nozzle to the 860 with its 2.5 nozzle, it's just no contest. The 860 wins hands down. Now, this is a great multi-purpose gun, but even with the 2.0 nozzle, it's just not that effective for high build surfacing primers like Duratec. All right, so all that being said, with my emphasis on fiberglass mold making, I'm doing a lot more pattern surfacing, spraying a lot more Duratec more often, and on bigger patterns. So I decided to look into other equipment that was more effective for that. Enter the GX4. Let's open it up and take a look. All right, first you've got a manual that's got the parts diagram, safety and setup, HVLP best practices for spraying, recommended cleanup, and some troubleshooting steps here that are all typical of an HVLP gun. Next, we've got the cup. Now you can get these in a variety of cup sizes in both plastic and aluminum, but by default, the gun comes with a 1 liter, 1000 milliliter, which is much bigger than the 600 milliliter cup I have with the 860. Now this larger capacity combined with the larger output nozzle should lead to covering a lot more surface area quickly, which is essential for working with Duratec and its short pot life. Now there's a couple of other things in here, we'll get to those in just a second. Next is tools, and you've got some pretty typical tools here: nozzle wrench, a socket spanner, a brush cleaner, some air connection, filter that I actually never use. I always filter via cone filter the material before putting into the cup, but typical stuff that you'll find with an HVLP there. And then of course there's the gun body. I normally don't pay much attention to this, but you can tell this is a well-made gun body. It's got a nice feel and balance to it. And I really like the natural cast material. Compare that to, you know, say an anodized or a coated surface on a gun. While that might look nice, what I found is it tends to actually make it harder to identify material and debris and therefore make it harder to clean up. And also these finishes tend to fade and wear over time. So I think I just much prefer a natural cast finish of this gun. But the main thing that we're talking about here is this nozzle. What can I say? The 2.5 on the 860 is almost twice as big as the typical 1.4 that you'll find on an HVLP. This nozzle is 4.8. It's almost twice as the size as this nozzle. It's massive. For comparison's sake, it's actually the same size as the standard FN6 nozzle you'll find on the dump gun, but with the control of an HVLP. Now you can buy this gun in a number of standard configurations, but I chose to go with the recommended 4.8 millimeter configuration for gel coat, which I expect will perform really well spraying Duratec face up. Now that said, the only nuance for this nozzle that I'm aware of is that given its size, to break the gun down, you actually have to pull the needle out the front of the gun rather than the rear, which is a little bit unusual, but I don't expect that to be any additional work. We'll find out. Now that said, I also purchased the 3.0 and 3.5 nozzle kits, and that's what's in the cup here. So in no particular order, the first one that we have here is the 3.5 millimeter nozzle kit. And so that includes its own air cap and needle. And then the next one, of course, is going to be the 3.0 millimeter nozzle kit, including its own air cap and needle. Now you can buy the gun configured with any of these out of the box, or you can contact them and purchase the nozzle kit separately like I did and use them with the same gun body. They don't offer it online, but if you contact them over email or give them a call, it's an easy transaction. They're super helpful. I decided to get all three for my own comparisons. Now with a high degree of control, I expect the 4.8 is all I'm gonna need, but I'll have the other two just in case I find out that the 4.8 is actually overkill for certain, maybe thinner materials. One example of that might be when applying Duratec modified with their high gloss additive. That additive does two things. First, it creates sort of a one-step primer and top coat application. The result is a shiny, high gloss surface ready for mold, but it also thins the Duratec pretty significantly. And I found even spraying with the 2.5, it's just too much. That said, admittedly, I didn't really tune the gun either when applying that thinner material, so I'll try setting it up properly with each nozzle and we'll find out. So that's the review. Basically an HVLP gun with an extremely large capacity. I'm going to take this and immediately put it to the test and resurface that rectangular planter. Now I originally surfaced that with the 2.5 with a brand new fresh container of Duratec, no chunky monkey, and it did okay, but it still struggled a little bit. And I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but I had to sand some spots all the way down to the bare MDF. So I'll batch up some more Duratec and go over the whole thing. And with the extra capacity and output of this gun, I'm expecting to rip through it pretty quick. So we're gonna find out. Now, in terms of my settings, my instincts jived with what they recommend, and that's basically to spray with it wide open, especially for a material like Duratec. So the widest fan pattern, wide open with the fluid, and I always leave the air wide open on my guns anyway because I'll dial that in on the regulator I have on the whip. They recommend 50 to 80 PSI, which is a little bit higher than I'm used to, so I'll start at 50 and work my way up or down from there. Now, in terms of cleanup, aside from the unusual front entry of the needle, I'll follow my typical protocol for cleaning it with acetone and breaking the whole gun down. Now that said, they do recommend something that's a little bit new to me by adding some acetone, unscrewing the air cap a little bit, and then spraying and basically back pressuring the air to gurgle solvent back up through the canal and back into the gun. So I'll play with that a little bit and see how it works, but I'm pretty thorough in cleaning my guns anyways, and I expect that'll work just fine with this gun as well. Let's do this.